Fantastic. All right, what I'm going to do is, Susan, I'm going to hand over to you to begin today.
Are we ready?
Yes.
On screen. Okay, we'll get going with 266 and counting. Welcome, everyone. I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land we meet on today. I'm speaking to you from the beautiful Gadigal land. And it's wonderful to see all the lands that you're calling in from today on the Menti board. I extend my respect to the elders past and present, particularly thank them for the tireless work and advocacy to address the overrepresentation of Aboriginal children in the child protection system. I also extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people with us here today. So before we start, I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping. As Lauren stated, we are recording today. So if there's any reason that you do not want to be seen, please turn your cameras off. We understand that. But we do encourage you to keep them on. We'd love to see your faces. As we have had such an overwhelming response to today's session, you'll notice that you've been placed on mute. We are the first session, so we did expect a big number, and I'm looking at now we're already at 273. We will try and cover all the questions submitted beforehand, and if there is time, we will ask questions that may come up during the conversation. So drop your questions into the chat, which will be managed by Bronte. So if we do have time, we will call some of those questions, but if not, we will present them to DCJ to answer, and they will be able to feedback to you. Today, our sector conversation is about recommissioning for TEI and Family Connect and Support. I welcome Anthony Shannon, Director of Early Intervention, and his team to talk with us about the process. In recognition of the need to ensure consistency for everyone joining one of these sessions across the state, and like our usual sector conversations, Anthony will present to you, and then we will move into the conversation which addresses the questions submitted. So thank you for joining us, Anthony, and I shall hand over to you.
Thanks, Susan, and thank you, FAMS, for hosting this sector conversation today. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting today. I'm coming to you from Wongal country and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to Aboriginal people here today. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Anthony Shannon, Director, Early Intervention, Volunteering, Youth and Carers with New South Wales Communities and Justice. The New South Wales Government is committed to continuing to invest in early intervention programs that improve outcomes for vulnerable children, young people, families and communities. We know that strong community wellbeing is critically important for helping children, young people and families thrive, especially when they are experiencing or at risk of experiencing vulnerability. This collective sense of wellbeing, participation, trust and access to resources and services supports people and communities to grow and fulfill their potential. To thrive, children and young people also need protective factors, and we know that the presence of these protective factors can reduce risks to children and young people's development and life outcomes. And we know that effective early support is possibly the most promising strategy for changing the trajectories of children, families and young people. This is something that you know well, and we have seen the positive impact of your efforts, your support for families, children, young people and communities throughout both the targeted early intervention and Family Connect and Support programs. Commencing this April, we are recommissioning both the targeted early intervention and Family Connect and Support programs, with new contracts to commence from 1 July 2025. Recommissioning of these programs will be undertaken within the context of a number of New South Wales and national priority reforms and initiatives, including the National Agreement on Closing the Gap, specifically Target 12, that Aboriginal children are not overrepresented in the child protection system, and Priority Reform 2, focused on building the Aboriginal community-controlled sector. Family is Culture, the independent review of Aboriginal children and young people in out-of-home care in New South Wales, and Safe and Supported, the national framework for protecting Australia's children. The New South Wales Government and our commitment to investing 30% of earlier intervention funding with Aboriginal community-controlled organisations is central to our recommissioning of these programs. as is the implementation of the Aboriginal case management policy and support for Aboriginal-led commissioning. Recommissioning of the targeted earlier intervention and family connecting support programs will be guided by 4 principles. Firstly, Aboriginal self-determination. Might just move on to the next slide. Thank you. We want to do more to embed Indigenous data sovereignty and governance principles within the program and support and resource Aboriginal community-controlled organisations working with their communities on data sovereignty and governance. We will also continue to progress towards our target of investing 30% of early intervention program funding with Aboriginal community-controlled organisations. While we have made some progress on this target and supported growth in the Aboriginal community-controlled early intervention sector, we still have a way to go to deliver on this target. We know that self-determination requires not only our commitment, but genuine sharing of decision-making and authority, service system co-design and Aboriginal-led commissioning. And we will continue to embed the Aboriginal case management policy principles throughout the program. Second, a flexible and holistic service system. Creating a streamlined service system that is family and community focused continues to be critical to the program. Much work has been done together with you on this, and we'll continue to focus effort on this. Building a culturally safe service system that respects and values culture and identity is vital to ensuring Aboriginal people can access, be involved in, and thrive within services. And this is also about shared respect, shared meaning and knowledge, and the experience of learning together. Targeting resources to the greatest need remains vital to ensuring we are investing in service delivery in communities and in supporting client cohorts with the greatest need. Thirdly, an evidence-informed practice approach. Undertaking an evidence-informed practice approach will ensure that we are using the best available evidence to design and deliver early support services, including both research evidence and data, the lived experience and client voice of children, young people, families and communities, that is the day-to-day feedback of people accessing services, and practitioner expertise and local knowledge, the clinical and subject matter expertise, insights and skills developed over many years by you. Driving evidence and data-driven practice and decision-making through recommissioning will also result in more service delivery informed by what works to improve outcomes. And key to this is providing accessible data and evidence of what works. The Communities and Justice Evidence Portal, a public online repository of early intervention evidence, together with the targeted earlier intervention and family connecting support programs, public data dashboards, are designed to support this decision-making. And lastly, a continuous improvement approach. We have heard from you the need to better support sector workforce capability, and this is something that we will look to engage more with you on. Consistent and quality community-level data will be available to you throughout recommissioning to inform the local planning process and support collaborative service redesign. And importantly, we will continue to build the evidence of what works in early intervention through our program evaluations, data and evidence reviews, practitioner expertise, and client voice. Throughout recommissioning, we want to share authority and decision-making with Aboriginal community-controlled organisations and Aboriginal communities through Aboriginal-led commissioning. We have drafted these principles from listening to the Aboriginal community-controlled sector. We want to make sure that culture is at the heart of everything we do. We recognise and value the importance of Aboriginal cultures, knowledge and diverse experiences of Aboriginal people, including where they fit with family, community and society. Cultural practices such as a collective community focus on child rearing, the importance of elders and spiritual practices all contribute to effective family functioning and positive outcomes for children. This is why culture needs to be at the heart of everything we do to strengthen the Aboriginal community-controlled sector. We want to make sure that Aboriginal families are at the centre of everything we design. Aboriginal families are pivotal to the well-being of Aboriginal communities and the continuation of culture. Families are important in defining identity and a sense of connectedness to kinship and culture. If we are to achieve the vision of safe and strong families, we must ensure families are at the centre of everything we design. We want to share authority so decisions about Aboriginal people are made by Aboriginal people. We believe that Aboriginal-led commissioning and partnerships with Aboriginal communities and community-controlled organisations will advance autonomy through equitable participation, shared authority and decision-making. Now I want to talk in more detail about the recommissioning approach we will undertake together with you. Commencing April this year, we will recommission both the targeted earlier intervention and family connected support programs with new 5-year contracts to commence from 1 July 2025. The design of the recommissioning has been informed by sector feedback over the past 5 years, evaluations of both programs currently underway, several early intervention evidence reviews, and implementation learnings from both programs. The targeted early intervention and family connect and support programs will be merged into one program from July 2025 in order to streamline the program and contracts. The evaluations in particular have highlighted the opportunity to better integrate both programs to help build a more connected early intervention sector, ensuring greater flexibility and improved access for families. The combined targeted earlier intervention program will have 3 program activities: community strengthening, family connected and support, and wellbeing and safety. The family connected and support service model, a statewide service model consistent across all service providers, will largely remain the same with some minor changes and streamlining of data reporting. The overall family connect and support budget and service delivery will remain the same. This decision is based on the findings of the family connect and support evaluation currently underway, which is highlighting the flexibility and impact of the model for families and children, and the role of family connect and support more broadly in supporting a well-functioning child and family service system. The program activities and service types within community strengthening and wellbeing and safety will also be streamlined, reducing duplication and simplifying the program structure and data reporting. This is something that your feedback, together with the program evaluations, have recommended. Targeted earlier intervention recommissioning will be undertaken within existing local program budgets, with local planning and collaborative system design focused on the principle of using evidence-informed decision-making to target resources to the greatest need across communities. Where funding becomes available, this will be prioritised for investment with Aboriginal community-controlled organisations to continue our progress towards delivering our 30% early intervention investment target with the Aboriginal community-controlled sector. And we would also like to hear from you about a potential renaming of the targeted earlier intervention program. And I'll talk more about that shortly. Now let's talk about the recommissioning timeline. Commencing in April through to July this year, we will engage you and other local early intervention stakeholders in a local planning process. This planning process will use local socio-economic, child protection and program data, local information and early intervention evidence to understand local needs and identify local priorities. The targeted earlier intervention program is designed to be flexible and responsive to changing and emerging needs in communities. Then, from June to September, following and informed by this planning phase, we will undertake local collaborative service system redesign work together with you. This redesign work, focusing on outcomes and using evidence, will align local investment and service delivery to local needs and priorities. This redesign work will look different across different parts of the state and within different parts of communities and justice districts. It is worth noting that a significant amount of service system reform has already been undertaken over the previous 5 years. The result of this is that in some places there will be no change to investment and service delivery. And in other places there may be minimal change to location, service model, or client cohorts. But also in other places there may be significant change to either location of service delivery, service models, and/or client cohorts. The scale of local changes will be understood once the planning phase is finalised. Following finalisation of local planning and service system redesign, local recommissioning plans will be submitted to the Minister for Families and Communities for consideration and approval between October to December 2024. Once local recommissioning plans are approved, we will then, from January to March 2025, negotiate new 5-year contracts and commence any local procurement activities if needed. Where local recommissioning plans denote no change or minimal change, consideration will be given to negotiating new contracts first with existing targeted earlier intervention service providers. This will also minimise disruption to the existing service system and to families and communities. Where local recommissioning plans denote significant change, this may involve negotiating new contracts with existing targeted earlier intervention service providers and/or local procurement processes. This determination will be informed by the local planning process, the scope and scale of the change, the location of the change, and local market analysis. We can also reassure existing service providers that recommissioning is not a performance management exercise. Any performance issues in the targeted earlier intervention and family connected support programs will continue to be managed outside of the recommissioning process. Recommissioning decisions will be based on the recommissioning principles and the local planning process. The vision of the recommissioned targeted earlier intervention program is that children, young people, families and communities in New South Wales receive the support they need when they need it. And the program objectives are that Aboriginal children, young people, families and communities have access to Aboriginal designed or co-designed and Aboriginal delivered supports and services. Also, that targeted earlier intervention services are culturally safe, trauma aware and informed, and healing focused. We want families, children and young people's needs to be met early to prevent the escalation of vulnerability, and that families are able to access support early in the lives of their children and young people. And risk factors that lead to child abuse, neglect and domestic and family violence are identified and addressed early. As mentioned, given that the purpose and target groups of the targeted earlier intervention and family connected support programs overlap significantly, recommissioning provides an opportunity to consolidate and streamline these programs into one. Early findings from both program evaluations also indicate the value of better integration of both programs as well as contract streamlining. Next slide, please. Thank you. And we would like to engage with you about what we should call this new combined program. We already have some previous feedback from the sector, Aboriginal stakeholders and communities who feel strongly that the term intervention does not reflect the strengths-based and child and family-centred practices that underpin the work in these programs to provide early support to families and children and communities. Please let us know any feedback or suggestions in the chat or later via email, tei@dcj.nsw.gov.au. We've also made some updates to the targeted earlier intervention program specifications, which incorporate the outcomes framework, program and program logics, informed by both the targeted early intervention and family connected support evaluations, our evidence reviews, feedback from the sector, and learnings from program implementation. From early April, we will begin consultation with you on the program specifications and program name. The program specifications will be posted on the Communities and Justice Targeted Earlier Intervention webpage from early April, followed by a series of sector consultations. As noted, the redesign of the program specifications has been informed by both program evaluation recommendations and findings, namely clarifying the role of the program, reducing duplication across program activities and streamlining the program structure, improving cultural safety of the program, refining outcomes, including working with the Aboriginal community-controlled sector to develop culturally relevant outcomes, streamlining and strengthening data collection and reporting, maintaining family connect and support as a specific early intervention model, and improving cultural pathways. We are committed to ongoing sector communication and engagement throughout the recommissioning. We currently have a number of sector recommissioning information sessions this week and next week, hosted by State Peaks, FAMS, ABSEC, LCSA, and Youth Action, and a further session also hosted by Communities and Justice. Ongoing, we have a number of ways to stay engaged with you. The Early Intervention Central Council has reconvened to provide a statewide consultative body to share sector knowledge and expertise, provide strategic advice and problem solve, and better inform recommissioning locally and statewide. Members of the council include State Peaks, FAMS, ABSEC, LCSA, Youth Action and NCOS, and Communities and Justice. The targeted early intervention informed newsletter remains a key communication channel to keep you informed, along with the targeted earlier intervention webpage on the Communities and Justice website. Communities and Justice has scheduled a number of recommissioning local information sessions, both face-to-face and online, and we can do more as needed. There will also be a range of state peak sector engagement opportunities over the coming months, and Communities and Justice local planning sessions will also commence from April. To wrap up, as noted, there is a series of sector recommissioning information sessions in March, which will be followed by an update of the Communities and Justice Earlier Intervention webpage with the latest recommissioning information, local recommissioning data, and community profiles. We will communicate out to the sector through the targeted early intervention informed newsletter once this information is posted late March. Next slide, please. Thank you. Local recommissioning information sessions and forums will run across April to June, and in April we will commence the program specification sector consultations. And local needs and planning and service system redesign workshops with stakeholders will commence from April through to September. To stay informed, please subscribe to the Targeted Early Intervention Informed newsletter and regularly check the Communities and Justice Targeted Early Intervention webpage. The information from this presentation will be shared on the webpage by the end of March. Please contact your local commissioning and planning officer in the first instance if you have any recommissioning questions, and please feel free to reach out to your peak for support. You can also ask questions or provide feedback to the TEI mailbox at tei@dcj.nsw.gov.au. Thanks for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And I know that Susan has some questions and listen to any comments from you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anthony. Yes, we do have some questions. Thank you for running through the process. As you know, recommissioning can be a highly stressful time for organisations, yet there's also an exciting opportunity for change. I'd just love to hear a little about your hopes for this process before we start, Anthony.
I think recommissioning really gives us an opportunity to again, think about the role of early intervention in our service system and concentrate on directing our efforts, our investment in our service delivery to areas of greatest need across our communities. We know that providers all across the early intervention service system are facing significant demand. We know that providers are delivering really excellent services and delivering good outcomes for families and communities. We want to make sure that we're aligning that service delivery and investment to where the need is. We also want to make sure that we're progressing towards our 30% early intervention investment target with Aboriginal community controlled organisations. It's a commitment that we have had in place now for a number of years, and we need to do more work in that space. So the recommissioning does give us an opportunity to continue to work towards that.
Thanks so much. It's great to hear your answer. We know that new contracts will commence on the 1st of July 2025, which certainly seems not that far away. Of course, it's very frustrating to hear that recommissioning will be within existing local budgets, as we're constantly asked to do more with less, yet the sector is seeing an increased need for services, especially post-COVID. As you know, SAMS is lobbying government for a 30% increase in funding for the TEI programme. And like you have said, we are also told reform is on the way, but right now there is no new money. Anthony, what are your thoughts on when we may see a greater investment in TEI, and how will it be managed if we do get some further funding?
That's a good question. Look, I think the Minister has made some really strong statements around support for early intervention in the service system, and we are hopeful that that'll translate to increased investment over time. We're in the process now of finalising the evaluations for both family connected support and targeted early intervention. We'll have both of those by the end of the year, and both of those will be posted on the DCJ website in full, so everybody will have full opportunity to have a look at those evaluation reports. I think coming off the back of those evaluations, it'll put us in a strong position, hopefully, to make a case to government around further investment in early intervention. The timing of that, though, I guess remains a question that we'll have to kind of, consider closer to the time when the evaluation reports are finalised. But certainly our intention, as we've talked about, for some time, is to do our evaluations and then put that case to government. Unfortunately, there will be no new funding for this immediate round of recommissioning, but we are hopeful that over time, over the life of those next 5-year contracts, that that business case hopefully will be successful. But only time will tell about that.
Yeah. We are certainly anxiously awaiting the evaluation too, to add to our lobbying, and we will keep lobbying as hard as we can for the government to push forward with rebalancing the funds in the system. So for this recommissioning period, will the same funding as previous years in the programme stay in the districts, or will money be moved across districts depending on need?
So district budgets, the budgets the districts have now will be the budgets that they'll use for recommissioning. So those funding budgets will stay within districts. They won't move across the state. That's a decision that the minister's made around the parameters for recommissioning. So what budgets districts have now is what they'll use to undertake their recommissioning and local planning and design work in.
Thank you. Anthony, can you explain a little bit more about the local planning process? How is the funding going to be calculated and distributed? Will it be based on client numbers, engagement outcomes, demand for services, and complexity of client needs?
So the planning process really is a key step in kind of commissioning cycle, where you have the opportunity to kind of step back and have a look at a range of kind of data and other local information around communities. So we'll make available on the DCJ TEI website local level data that districts and early intervention stakeholders will be able to use to have conversations around needs in their communities. What's changed? Is there new or emerging needs? In some cases, some of those needs may not have changed. In other cases, they may have. And the kind of planning phase is really an opportunity to look at the data, use your local information from service providers, and have that conversation and agree on kind of what are the kind of priorities and needs in communities that we want to make sure that we're addressing as a priority. And there will be also a range of evidence on the data portal, on the DCJ DCJ evidence portal that will also be used in those conversations as well. And then the next stage involves, looking at kind of, is there parts of the service system that need to be redesigned to better align where service delivery is occurring with those identified needs and priorities. Now, you'll know the district budgets because the district budgets are set, so there's no new money, and each district has their own budget, so they'll plan within that budget. And it's not necessarily about looking at the performance of providers at all. It's about looking at what are the needs, what's the data indicating where the priorities are, and then doing that service system realignment.
Thank you. So Anthony, our sector know their communities. How should they prepare for this local planning in their district? What are the key things that you're looking for when they come to these meetings?
I think engagement is important. We're looking to engage a wide range of stakeholders in those conversations around understanding needs. I think the local information, local intelligence, if you like, that providers kind of bring to those conversations is really important. I mean, data can only tell us so much. I think it's the practitioner expertise and client voice input that providers will bring to those conversations locally that will really help to understand at the community level what the need is. So I think bringing along that information around your community that identifies where needs is important. Engaging the conversation around what the service system should look like, what are the service models that best align with addressing needs, what are the client cohorts that are top of the list for ensuring service delivery is supporting. And I think that's really kind of where we would encourage providers to kind of engage in those conversations at that level.
Great. I'm a little bit curious. I'm putting myself in the shoes of some of the organisations. I think for me, it's recording your answer there and really sort of drilling down into that so that the sector is really clear going in about what is required, so that they're feeling confident when they go into that session as to that they've got the evidence, they've done their, we're expecting things like a needs assessment or some feedback from their data as to what they see in their district. Is that the sort of thing that the sector's sort of having a look around to say, if we were going to looking at our district, where is the unmet need, where have we met need, and we see that works, that model is a good one to bring to the table, but being quite objective about the discussion.
Yeah, look, I think there will be a range of data on the DCJ website which providers should look at to kind of help inform themselves around what the data is telling us around their communities. But it's really that local information they'll bring. I mean, there's no requirement that providers will have needed to do any kind of needs analysis themselves, because the kind of data, the conversations that will happen around what the need is, what the evidence is telling us around what type of service models deliver kind of outcomes. That information will all be available to the sector. So it's really kind of about engaging, having a strategic kind of look across your community around, using the data and evidence to identify those needs and priorities. And, a lot of people have been involved in these conversations in the past. A lot of this information is kind of held locally. So, we're not necessarily looking to, recreate the wheel or generate needs that aren't there. Some of this information is already known. So it's, in some cases, it might just be a matter of kind of sense checking with the sector that we've got, the right kind of service models in the right places, and then kind of going from there.
Brilliant, thank you. You've confirmed that recommissioning won't be a competitive tendering process. What would trigger the procurement within a district?
Well, as I mentioned, where there's no change, once we do the local planning and design work, if there's no change to parts of the service system or very minimal change, then we'll look in first instance to negotiate with existing providers, new contracts with existing providers. It will only really be where there's significant change that's identified in that kind of local planning process that it may result in a procurement process locally. It may not. There may be instances where we might be able to negotiate with existing providers where there's significant change, but there also might be instances where it requires a procurement process, and that will obviously depend on the change, whether with the location of the change, kind of what the market analysis tells us around the the different organisations in that location, and then those procurement processes will then be undertaken locally. But we won't really know that until we've done the planning process and those plans have been endorsed by the minister. Yeah. So just to drill down onto that a little bit more. So looking at services, I'm thinking of your market analysis, and I know some of the organisations have said to us, we've got a contract that we know we need to move because we're not unmet needs. So that's the sort of thing that they will bring to the planning process. Not necessarily. It's not necessarily about their contract that they bring to the planning process. It's really about their understanding of the community and the needs in the community and what are the priorities in the community. It's kind of local intelligence that they'll bring to the planning process, which obviously is informed by their service delivery, but it's not necessarily about discussing their contract in the planning process. No. But that's something that they will, as part of their looking at the needs of their community, they know there's a need there, and they need to start looking. They need to identify that in that conversation because they found this missing need. That's right. And, look, and a lot of providers will already know that. Like it's they'll come to those conversations, which they often do now in interagency forums and kind of other local network meetings that districts or the sector holds around emerging needs or changing needs in communities. So it's really kind of a continuation of that kind of engagement that happens across the sector in a lot of those other kind of forums, agencies where people are talking about kind of emerging or changing needs. And the planning process is really a kind of a focused conversation on that to kind of identify what those needs are and look to try and get a consensus if we can around what's the priorities in that location or that community. Great.
We've been asked about recognition for organisations that have had additional challenges like natural disasters. How would that fit into that district planning?
Well, again, I guess, there's in the kind of needs analysis section, the service system redesign, I think there's obviously consideration around that. The TEI contracts and the program itself are both designed to be flexible and responsive to changing needs, even after we've signed contracts. So, even now in the existing program, if a natural disaster occurs, in a community and the provider needs to change what they're doing, they can have a conversation with our local DCJ, commissioning and planning staff. They can vary their contract by agreement. We've got a relatively straightforward process to do that, and a lot of organisations have been doing that over the last couple of years. It's not just the kind of one-off kind of set and forget. If you don't kind of plan for, for example, a natural disaster during the planning process, it doesn't mean that, if that actually happens, there's no capacity to kind of, provide support in that place, because, as I mentioned, we can kind of vary contracts, over the 5-year time of the contract.
That's good to hear. And just leading on from that, addressing the specific needs of remote and rural districts as well.
Yeah, so I think, as I've mentioned, there's significant demand across the whole of the service system, and I think we, our rural and remote providers, obviously understand or are impacted by the difficulties of providing services in those locations with obviously increasing demand. Again, it kind of comes down to that planning process and that service system redesign conversation around how to best, use the investment, the resources that we have, the service delivery models that we have to, deliver as best as possible on, to try and address the needs in communities, understanding that that's a significant challenge when, resources, we don't have any new money going into the recommissioning process.
Exactly. Another question we've had about, will there be a focus to invest in growing neighbourhoods? I think you've sort of answered that question, because we'll be looking at the stats and the numbers, and so I shall move on because we've not got a lot of time.
Yeah.
And one of the questions we had is can you confirm to us today that neighbourhood centres will continue to be part of TEI and not leave a huge proportion of clients unsupported?
Yeah, the community strengthening stream of the program continues to be an important, program stream in the program. It has been for the last, 4 years of the TEI program, will continue to be in the new program. We've seen, the value of that, particularly through, COVID, in the evaluations kind of highlighting the role of community strengthening and the value of that. And, we were very intentional about including that stream in the program when we did, the original targeted early intervention program design, and it will continue to be, an important, vital, and funded part of the new program as well.
That's good to hear. Another question around, you've talked about streamlining services, and one of the ones that FAMs often, and I know you hear that from me quite often, will there be a correlation between family preservation and TEI? Will the programs merge together or find some way of being able to move up and down that whole continuum?
Yeah, it's a good question. We've been working quite closely with our family preservation colleagues in DCJ around our recommissioning of TEI and family connect and support and family preservation. The principles which I talked about today, they're joint recommissioning principles across both our programs. There's quite a lot of alignment around the thinking in terms of how, we're approaching the recommissioning. We do acknowledge that families often move between both programs, and we're kind of mindful that, existing providers obviously deliver, a lot of existing providers deliver both programs. So, we want to try and kind of make those, those programs kind of seamless, that, families can get extra support as they're needed. But look, the other point probably to make is that within the TEI program itself, there is no time constraints or, around how long a person or family or individual can be supported for. So it is really meant to be flexible, and if families need greater length of support, the TEI program is designed to be able to kind of do that. Obviously that may mean you might need to have some conversations locally with your contract manager around what that means for your contract, but certainly that certainly exists. And it's certainly something we want to make sure that we continue to kind of focus on and encourage providers to be as flexible as they can, particularly as there's no kind of criteria constraints around time periods for delivery of service in TEI.
Excellent. It's wonderful to see the investment of 30% of the early intervention programs being invested in ACOs. Anthony, what is the percentage now? And can you explain to us how the 30% will be achieved and by when?
So at the moment, across our early intervention programs, the investment in the Aboriginal community controlled sector is sitting at 11.1%. In the TEI program itself, it's actually 7.2%. And so we'll continue to work towards our target of 30%. Obviously, recommissioning provides an opportunity to progress towards that target. And we'll continue to kind of work towards that target over the life of the next 5-year contracts as well. We haven't had any new money in TEI in the targeted early intervention program for over 10 years. So over the last couple of years in particular, where funding is relinquished by providers, where some providers, and we've had quite a little bit of this over the last couple of years, providers have come back to us and said we can no longer deliver the service and given the funding back. The majority of that, the vast majority, that's been recommissioned out to Aboriginal community controlled organisations. That kind of process will continue. But obviously the local planning as well, may identify opportunities to kind of also kind of continue to work towards that target. Hopefully at some point along the way we will get some new funding, and that will certainly make delivery of that target much easier. But at the moment we don't have any new money, so we'll continue to use those strategies that I've outlined.
Well, we all hope that the money will increase as well, and there will be a target in that way. Just picking up on when you were saying that how you will build on the percentage that when someone relinquishes funding. So if someone relinquishes funding in one district, does it stay in that district, or could it go anywhere in the state?
No, it's at the moment it's been staying in that district. Whether we kind of stick with that process or not over the 5 years of the contract, I think is probably a conversation that we should have with the sector. But certainly that's the process that's been occurring to date, and that's the kind of process that will happen throughout the actual recommissioning process up to 2025. Will stay, funding relinquished will stay in districts.
That's something that a few people have asked me over time. We've had a couple of questions submitted around this issue. So non-Aboriginal organisations that have Aboriginal services, how do they fit into this percentage mix?
So the 30% investment target is specifically related to investment with Aboriginal community controlled organisations. We've got about 54 ACOs that are funded under TEI, and that's grown from I think 36 at the start of the program. So we've had a number of ACOs come into the program. So the funding only relates to ACOs. I think it's fair to point out that yes, a lot of organisations deliver non-ACOs deliver services to Aboriginal people, and obviously that will continue, but the target itself only relates to funding that's directed to Aboriginal community controlled organisations.
So for those services, what's the long-term future for them? Is there a plan to move those services across to ACOs, or what's the long-term vision for DCJ in terms of those services?
Well, I guess it's I think the way to look at it is again kind of going back to the planning process. There's been a significant amount of reform already. Some things in some parts of the state there might not be any change at all. If in other parts of the state there may be minimal change, or there may be significant change. I don't think there's any. The planning process is not necessarily about identifying which organisations are not delivering funds and taking that off them. It's about planning and understanding what the priorities are. Non-ACOs will continue to work and support Aboriginal people. I mean, we do have a key kind of principle of the recommissioning around improving our cultural safety in the program. It's something we certainly want to continue to support non-ACOs to do. But the planning process, if funding becomes available, the priority will be to direct it to ACOs. But obviously non-ACOs, throughout the service system, Aboriginal people, access non-ACOs as well, and they'll continue to be a part of the service system.
That's good to hear, because ideally we need to work as allies and in partnership. One of the questions have been asked is there an expectation we'll provide less for Aboriginal communities given the focus on investment toward the ACO sector? You've answered that a little bit. I think lots of organisations sort of think, so how is this going to work with the target being for a start 30%, which is a big jump from 7 to 30, and it'd be amazing if we can achieve that in a 5-year period. What are your thoughts around services where that is the question. Will there be an expectation to provide less, or as you say, we need to build our cultural capability up as well? And how do we do that with this system in place? So I'm going to jump up and down so my light comes back on.
Yeah, look, I think obviously we've got a priority to continue towards delivering on our target. The principle of Aboriginal services designed and delivered by Aboriginal people is central to the recommissioning and to the program. If we can deliver on our target, that would be fantastic. But obviously, as I said, mainstream organisations will still, Aboriginal people can still access non-ACOs. And so I think, what we want to do is increase the amount of service delivery that's being delivered by ACO, so Aboriginal people can, access services that are designed and delivered by Aboriginal people as, in principle as the priority. But obviously there'll be a place for non-ACOs that support Aboriginal people as well.
Of course. You talked about the recommissioning process for ACOs, which sounds very exciting, and some of the principles you talked about in your presentation. When do you envisage this starting? Is it when we get to 30%, or is there a time when there will be separate commissioning or recommissioning?
Look, it's an interesting question. We do want to support Aboriginal commissioning through the recommissioning process. Obviously, it will depend on what funding becomes available through that process. To how much of that we can do, and we do kind of want to work locally with, or support locally with, Aboriginal local governance mechanisms around, kind of local decision making around what that Aboriginal-led commissioning looks like. So we don't have a specific model that we're kind of looking to roll out, or direct kind of people how to do that. We want to, I guess, be clear around the principles that Aboriginal-led commissioning is important, that services designed and delivered by Aboriginal people is a priority, and that we're kind of saying we want to support Aboriginal-led commissioning, and if we're able to kind of if funding becomes available, then let's have conversations locally with local Aboriginal governance mechanisms around how they would like to see Aboriginal-led commissioning happen locally.
Fantastic, thank you. I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to quickly whiz through the last few questions. Will we still be reporting into DEX? And if so, will there be any changes, especially within the community strengthening stream?
So DEX will still continue to be the data collection for the TEI program. We are making changes to DEX. We're streamlining the actual program itself, which will then obviously streamline DEX. We're removing duplication of service types from DEX, which will certainly make it easier for providers to enter data and collect data. The community strengthening stream at the moment, has 3 activity types. They'll be collapsed into one. That will certainly streamline that and reduce duplication of service types. So that'll make reporting easier. We're waiting for the final TEI evaluation report, which will contain the kind of outcomes reporting information, and that will give us more sense of, whether things like SCORE, for example, in community strengthening will continue or not. And, there's different views, obviously, in the sector around the value of the SCORE component of DEX in community strengthening. And
certainly are.
And the evaluation, final evaluation report, we're hoping will kind of unpack that a bit for us and give us a bit more clarity around that. So, we'll come back, obviously, once that's available, that information's available, we'll come back and talk more with the sector. And look, we've certainly got time to make those changes before we kind of enter the contract negotiation phase. So, we can look forward to more conversations about that.
I think the sector will be looking forward to conversations about DEX, especially Lisa. I want to ask the sort of final question. One of our services was asked that we know child safe standards are coming, and some organisations are trying to finalise their child safe policy. Can you provide us some clarification on how the sector will be supported?
So the child safe standards will become one of our notifiable policies in our program specifications for the program. And we'll continue to work with peaks. FAMS in particular has been quite proactive around, engaging with us in the sector around the child safe standards. So, we're happy to keep working, working alongside the peaks. Obviously, the Office of the Children's Guardian is responsible for, oversight of the child safe standards, policy work. So that will continue to remain there, but it will be a notifiable policy in our program.
Can you just explain to me what a notifiable policy is? I might be the only one that doesn't know.
It's just in our program specifications, if you have a look, you'll see it. Even at the moment, it kind of just lists the relevant legislation and policies that, kind of indicates people need to understand and comply by.
So what I'm hearing you saying is it'll be in as part of your contract as something you need to comply with. And so are you saying that you'll be working with us to sort of find out, maybe through the peaks and some consultations, what support the sector needs to move forwards with child safe standards, and to what your expectations would be? I'm a little confused. I'm sitting here as an organisation saying, okay, it's notable, I need to comply. What does that mean? How will you know that I'm complying? I think a lot of people are very worried about the workload.
Well, I think it's important to point out that the Office of the Children's Guardian is responsible for compliance around child safe standards. So we'll expect organisations obviously to be child safe, and we'll continue to work with the peaks around what support the sector needs to do that. But DCJ is not responsible for compliance around that.
Okay, so it's another one to put on top of our list. I think, Anthony, from FAM's point of view, we will continue to work with the sector and yourselves and the Children's Guardian to ensure that we can provide as much support as we can. So perfect timing. Thank you, Anthony. It's been enjoyable having this conversation with you, even though it's not across the table. And thank you for your open and honest response to our questions. I can see 99 in the chat. So unfortunately, with time, we can't address those right now, but we have collated them, and we will send them forward to you, Anthony, to have a look at with your team.
Right.
And we'll compile the answers. Either they can go directly in TEI form, or we might even come back together again a little bit further down the track to address some of the questions that have come up, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sounds like a great idea. Let's do that. And thanks so much for hosting the event. And thanks everybody for your questions. Thank you.
Right. So I would now like to hand over to Lauren, our Sector Engagement Manager. She's going to facilitate a short session on how FAMs can support you through the recommissioning process. So handing over to you, Lauren.
Thank you so much, Anthony, and also Susan. It's really great to have a chance to just kind of do a bit of a check-in with everyone and see how FAMs can best support you. Can I just get a wave? You can all hear me okay? Fantastic. So if you haven't already joined up with Menti, I've got the QR code back up there. So if you were kind of a little bit later to the conversation today, if you can jump onto Menti, we have a bit of a chance to kind of do a bit of a pulse check with you all to see where we're at, and also what you need as a sector to kind of move forward and really get those kind of questions answered, and the support that you desire to be able to go into recommissioning really confidently. So if you haven't used Menti before, there's two ways you can join. You can either join through your web browser, just joining through menti.com and use the code that's up there. Otherwise, you can join through your phone using the QR code. So while everyone's kind of just taking a minute, it'd be great if you can just, for yourself, think about today's session, it is very much the first conversation. We are literally the first conversation that TCJ is having. Where did this kind of land for you? Was it something that, you know, you found that this was great, I'm good, I'm off to recommissioning processes, I'm sweet, thanks so much? Is it that we've kind of met some of those needs, that it was useful, but you've actually got a lot of questions? And I can see from the chat that there is probably quite a few people who have got a lot of questions, and I saw a really strong theme around the culturally and linguistically diverse communities that people are representing. So I think there's going to be some really great chances to follow up and explore that further. Or was today just not what you needed? So I'll give you just a minute to kind of pop your responses in before I move on to the next slide, which is going to be asking you for some input as to how FAMs can respond as well. So just one more minute. If anyone's having any trouble with navigating this, let me know. You can also just email us directly if you kind of have some feedback that you want to kind of give to FAMs as well. All right, so it's a very strong, I actually don't think we need a much bigger sample size. They say that 100 is the sample size minimum that you want. And at this stage, it looks like we've got a lot more questions, Anthony. So that opportunity to do further work and kind of unpack some of that seems to be very clearly what the sector is needing and wanting, which is fabulous. So I will move on to our next question, which is really about trying to see what are your organisation's biggest challenges coming into recommissioning. So you do have quite a limited number of responses you can do. So pop everything into one text box. So if you have a number of issues that you're thinking of, if there's a range of challenges that you're wanting to kind of highlight to us, if you can put them all in one box, that would be fabulous. So I'll just give you a minute, kind of be thinking about that. Anthony, start taking notes. So funding is obviously something that has been strong, and I've been lucky enough to get out to some of our regional organisations recently, and funding has been something that I've clearly heard as well. So funding, retaining staff, time, which is kind of related to funding really, isn't it? Wages to cover to the demand of the child safe standards. No continuity across the district is coming up. So again, we're really hearing a strong message around funding. Again, raising ideas around the needs of culturally and linguistically diverse clients and refugees in regional areas. I think that's been something that's been really useful to hear today, that it'll be great for us to be able to unpack and understand that need a bit more. Increased burden of reporting with no additional supports. Okay, so it looks like we've got some really, really clear themes coming through, which would be great to be able to understand further. So the high number of clients and contracts that need to be readdressed and the right contract areas. The risk of being absorbed into other TEI funded services is something that people are concerned about. Accessibility, Auslan access required and funding for staff. I also noticed in the chat there was some real needs for interpreters, so Auslan interpreters and diverse language interpreters as well. So I'll just make sure that we've got another couple of minutes to really capture this, because I can see that we're still getting a lot of different responses coming up. We've got 182 so far. So what are the things that you're going to be needing to address in terms of challenges coming into recommissioning? The need to kind of have plans around bringing new CEOs in. I can appreciate how challenging that is. Having that kind of knowledge transfer and quite a complex landscape that we're going to be working towards. Ensuring the viability of community development and ensuring continuing work and capacity to identify and address need. It's not a hard one to kind of get around. I'll just give you one more minute to kind of finish up your answers. We've got 227 responses, which for us at FAMS will be really useful to kind of look at thematically and understand what it is that is really impacting the sector as we lead into this process. I see it here, uncertainty is one of the things, and so hopefully we can start to provide a little bit more clarity and uncertainty to help manage the uncertainty that we're facing at this point. All right. I am going to move us on to our next question because I'm really curious to hear what you think it is that we will be able to support you with at FAMS. So if you haven't had a chance to get this response in, please email us directly at info@fams.asn.au. So the next question I have for you to kind of be thinking of and reflecting on, and as I said before, this is really just the first conversation. So you might have an idea about what you might need now. This might change as we progress. But thinking about that challenge that you've just identified, what is it that FAMS can do to support your organisation with these challenges? So just take a minute. We've still got a lot of people on the call here. So it'd be great to capture as many responses as possible so that we can really target our response and that we can make sure that we're meeting the support needs that you have. Fantastic. So we're getting here, you know, some interest in getting some more consultations happening, and that's very much on our radar. Asking more of the questions. And it's great because one of the things that we're really wanting to do is continue this conversation and be able to ask, gather the questions that you've got and continue that conversation with DCJ. Keep sharing info. Neighbourhood centre advocacy, which is really fabulous, and one of the things that we really did have today, wanting to make sure that they are front and centre. District meetings. Great. So more training and workshops, gathering evidence and engaging community in service design. Information and knowledge so that we can meaningfully engage with recommissioning. It's a really great point, something that we hope to definitely do. Pushing to justify no change when research is clear with investment, where the investment should be made. Completely hear that and working towards that, absolutely. Translate the language of DCJ. That's a great one and something that we can kind of look to. So it'd be fabulous whoever's popped that one into the Menti here. If you can actually maybe reach out to me directly and let me know what it is, which parts of the language which were particularly unclear and how we can provide some clarity around that, which is great. Clarify the 30%, make sure that recommissioning reflects the local needs. Right. So I'll give you a little bit longer just to get those thoughts down. And again, this is really going to be the first of many opportunities for conversations. And we really look forward to being able to support you with some of these direct challenges that you're facing. Some need for program logic support, which is great. Opportunities for networks, which is something we're definitely looking to do as well. So that'd be really wonderful to kind of start supporting the sector in that way. I'll give everyone probably just one more minute to get those final responses down. Fantastic. Okay, and like I said before, please reach out directly to us if you did get a chance to pop your support needs into this, we're really keen to hear from you. So don't hesitate to reach out directly as well. This is just a great way for us to kind of capture a big amount of ideas in one kind of piece that we can then start to consolidate and respond to. So the final question that we have for you today is really going back to what Anthony was talking about in terms of looking at a new name for targeted early intervention and family connect and support. One of the things that we know is that language is incredibly important. It is really, really powerful, and it's really set the tone for how we do the work, the way that we engage with the work, and the way that our families that we support engage with us. So if you would like to be part of a workshop that we will be running at FAMS, we're looking to do it next month. Please just drop your email in here, and we will contact you directly to be able to lock in a bit of a time to unpack that and process what it is. In the lead up for that, it'd be really wonderful if you could start to think about what it is you think would be the things that would be essential to have in that name, to be able to really signal to the families that we're supporting, the communities that we're supporting, about what it is that we're doing in this space, and also as a point of being able to advocate for the type of work that we do. One of the things that we've been talking about a lot at FAMS here is how important it is for not just within our sector to understand the work that we do, but outside of our sector as well, so that we can really showcase and shine the spotlight on how essential early intervention and prevention is in our community settings. So kind of take that on board as you're thinking about what it might be, what it might be an appropriate name, what might be a useful name, because it really has a lot of power, and getting it right, I think, is really important. So if, again, you don't get a chance, if Menti kind of fails you for whatever reason, we will be putting this in our wrap as well, so we'll be able to follow up, and we will be also sharing the video through our wrap next week. So if there's anything that you need in terms of being able to speak to us, to be able to clarify in terms of further questions or support, please don't hesitate to reach out. So Susan, I'm just going to let that kind of roll for a little bit longer, so continue to add. And I will hand back to you to finish up today's session.
Thanks, Lauren. And thank you, everyone, for your time today, and particularly for putting the information into Menti, because we will be able to use this to develop a paper and to continue our discussions with DCJ and, of course, with the Minister as well. I can let you know that we have a commitment from the Minister to have 2 meetings with her for the sector to actually talk about what is working, and we'll be giving you more information about that down the track. Next steps. So from what we've heard today, please check in with your CPO and find out about local planning in your district. Find out when it is, and be assertive in making sure that you're invited to that session. And as we said, we are here to support you. So if you know when your session is and you need some support, let us know. We will collate any unanswered questions we had today that you put into the chat and provide them to Anthony and his team for a response. It seems to me from the little traffic light session that we did, it'd be great to invite Anthony back and really drill down on some of the things that he talked about today and answer some of the questions that have been raised following his presentation. So we will collate all the information gathered today, and we will send out a date and time for our renaming workshop. It was great to see so many people put their emails in. One of the things I said to Anthony when he first talked about it to us as the peaks was, it's really good to workshop a name, otherwise we'll end up with much TEI. We want to make sure it's a really constructive conversation, as Lauren said, about what TEI means, and being able to be proud of the program and in inviting people into that, and an explanation as to what they're coming into. We will be holding some regular conversations with you throughout this process. We will also be out and about on our FAMS Roadshow later in the year, supporting you in that recommissioning process. And that will be based on the challenges that you've raised here today and the other challenges that will be raised across the state. And finally, keep an eye out on our weekly wrap for any updates We will be keeping you as informed as we can. We do like to try and reframe what DCJ is requesting. I am on the council for the recommissioning of DCJ, so as much information of the, with DCJ on the recommissioning, so as much information as I have to represent you on that council, the better, and this has been fantastic for me to do that. So again, thank you so much for your time. We're finishing a little bit early, which is always good to give busy people back some time. And we look forward to being in contact with you again soon and to holding more of these conversations. Thank you.